Be reconciled with your brother. Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 to 26. Dear beloved saints, greetings to you. Today, let us listen to the Jesus sayings recorded in the Gospel of Matthew. Jesus is truly the most precious one in our lives. Yet so often we forget what is truly important and only think about the cross of Jesus and the salvation we have received. Of course, the cross is important, and salvation is important too. But there is something we must keep at the center of our lives. That is the Jesus sayings. The words Jesus himself spoke are what truly matter. It is a great blessing that we can still hear these Jesus sayings today. Jesus spoke many times about sin and forgiveness. The passage before us is extremely important, one of the most important. Please listen carefully to the very end. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, "Do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment." Do not murder is recorded in the Old Testament in what is called the Ten Commandments. People tried hard to keep this command, but because they only tried to keep it outwardly, without thinking about its true meaning, they became slaves to the commandment. Even now, do not murder is something that goes without saying, and yet, it is still the written word of God that defines sin. Why does murder happen? Because there is murder in the heart. And why does the heart give rise to murder? There are many reasons. Those causes must be dealt with. That is why we must listen carefully to what Jesus says next. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to his brother, "Raka," is answerable to the council. And anyone who says, "You fool," will be in danger of the fire of hell. Anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Why should we not be angry with our brother? This is something we must reflect on. If we just hear the words and let them pass by, it is like living with our eyes closed in faith. The anger in the heart toward a brother is what leads to murder. That is why we must love our brothers. But what if anger or insulting words toward a brother do arise? Should we just ask God to forgive us? Jesus says we must not do only that. Then what should we do? Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother. Then come and offer your gift. Before offering a gift at the altar, be reconciled with your brother. If your brother has something against you, bringing an offering will not be accepted. God does not receive offerings that are merely formal. Do not just ask God for forgiveness. Make things right with your brother. Even in the church, we often see quarrels. Sometimes it divides into two groups, who fight whenever they see each other, and yet still worship together. What a foolish sight this is. Do such people really have the words of Jesus within them? They are often more concerned with the interests of the church, and with gathering their own followers. Even in the days of Jesus, how much fighting there was. Pharisees, Sadducees, Herodians, Zealots, Essenes, all in conflict with each other. To follow Jesus, we must throw off the old ways. Becoming a disciple of Jesus is never an easy path. How can one be his disciple while constantly sinning against brothers? But even if one has sinned, if he makes peace with his brother, he is not lacking for the work of the Lord. Settle matters quickly with your adversary, who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still with him on the way, or he may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. Settle quickly, Jesus says. Make peace down to the very last penny. We must never fight with our brothers. Even loving one another will never be enough. And we must also do good to our neighbors. Why did Jesus give us such words? It is so that the kingdom of heaven may be established. If people fight and devour one another, how can that be heaven? That is hell. That is why we can say heaven is the land of peace. It is also the land of harmony. Where there is strife, hatred, and resentment, there can be no peace. And who is to build this land of peace? We who follow Jesus must build it. This peace is the peace that Jesus spoke of. Not the peace spoken by the prophets of old, but the peace that comes from Jesus, the peace of his kingdom. So then, whose words should we listen to? We must listen to the words of Jesus. And we must strive to understand his words fully. Today I hope each of us will reflect. Is there anyone who has something against me? If so, do not only say to God, "I have sinned." Go to that person and say, "I was wrong." Then, when you bring your offering of thanksgiving to God, he will be pleased. That is all for today. May you always be at peace. Thank you.